Welcome to everyone, Miami-Dade College, University of Miami, FIU. As you know, this session's active learning. We hope it'll be an active session for you. My name is Kelly Hernandez. I am the academic writing coach at the medical campus, and I'm here with my colleague.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ivan Toledo. I'm the Associate Director for Learning Resources at the medical campus, and welcome. Thank you for participating on our presentation today.
Excellent. Well, we're going to go over quickly what you can anticipate in this session. We're going to go over the basic principles of active learning and some common misconceptions about active learning. And we're going to give you, well, a demonstration / explanation of 4 active learning activities. Then we hope to get your feedback. None of these things we invented. Active learning is not an Ivan and Kelly invention. I was exposed to them when I was in the field of teaching English as a second language, when I was learning about formative and summative assessment. And I found a fantastic book by Angela and Cross on classroom assessment techniques. So this is actually their book. That's from like early 90s book. And then it was reinforced in trainings by ACU, the Association of College and University Educators. So I just want to put that out, that this is not anything that is original, but it's really good stuff. We hope that you'll get a lot out of it this morning.
And also, make sure that you write in the chat, collaborate with us, participate during our session. This morning, there will be 2 main keywords that you might hear from us, and those are recall and retention. Which are very important during the active learning process.
Very good. So the basic principles behind active learning is that you really need to engage students in the learning process. A lot of times they come to us, it's kind of flat. Sometimes you enter a classroom and it's like kind of flat, the energy's down. Or they enter a tutoring session, they may be discouraged, frustrated, at wit's end, and we need to get them involved and not just being passive participants in the learning process. Active learning creates strong and active connections in the brain, and we want them to have these pathways that already exist. We want those to be strengthened. We want to create new pathways, and ultimately we want students to be held accountable for constructing their own understanding, not just, you know, insert information. We want them to be involved. One common misconception is that active learning is going to take more time and preparation, and we already have a lot to cover, especially professors are like, I have to get through this chapter, I have to, you know, complete these competencies. It isn't just to cover the information, but for the students to learn. And another misconception is if we give students more control of their learning, it's going to be messy, there's going to be a lot of errors, but there's been really good research done. I'm thinking of Metcalf. She's written a lot on errorful learning, errorful learning, and how it's very beneficial for students to make errors, and by doing learning more, especially if it's followed up by, you know, feedback, corrective feedback. And another misconception is that students resist leaving the passive role to learning, passive role of learning. They want to be involved, but they don't know another way to learn. So we need to, there's another way to learn. Okay, anything you want to add, Ivan, before I go on to the active learning?
Yes, as Kelly was mentioning, under guiding principles, when we have students engaging in the learning process, they're able to interpret. They can collaborate amongst each other, provide possible solutions to different types of problems and situations. They engage in articulation. So we're getting them to discuss their knowledge and the reasoning behind their thinking and the decisions that they make. That all improves the learning process and their problem-solving skills. And in addition to that, they're making all these connections in the brain that facilitate the recall and the retention of information. Because, you know, when we learn, it's important not only to learn it, but also to be able to recall that information when it's needed in the future. So we're gaining their attention when we're engaging them in active learning activities that we're going to discuss next. So we increase motivation, and motivation is key in the learning process. If there's no motivation, learning really doesn't happen. So by allowing them to make all these connections with existing or the related information that they have in the brain, they can store and recall that information when that information is needed. And let's keep in mind that one of the misconceptions is that they might get lost in the way because there's no guidance or feedback. I mean, active learning is having the students engage in learning on their own and become their own learners. But during this process, the professors or tutors will act as guides during the learning process. So it's very important to keep that in mind. They're not going to be on their own during the learning process. They're going to be getting all this feedback and support from the faculty or from the tutor.
Excellent, thank you. This slide and the next one came from a training that ACU put out, and oops, I accidentally flipped it. Let me keep talking about that, sorry. And it was out of a study at Harvard, and students thought that when they were being lectured to, that they were learning more. In fact, stated lectures. And it's interesting because sometimes you may have this like superstar lecture, probably at Harvard you do, you can have many of those, so you feel like you are learning more, but they actually scored higher in courses where it was less talk by the professor, and they were engaged more. They had active learning activities. And this essence of it is that, and this is no mystery, but deep learning involves hard work. And sometimes the effort that it takes to learn, it looks like it's a sign of poor learning, but that's the stuff of learning. And we know that learning by osmosis is really not learning. Learning is creating. And so many times there's this perception of, I'm learning just because I'm listening. But they're actually learning more when they are, I don't know if you've heard of the flipped classroom, where the students are on stage. They have to perform. That's where they really learn. Ivan, did you have your hand up, or did I hear a click?
Of course, and Dr. Kelly is right. One of the reasons that the students actually score higher on tests after lessons that included active learning has to do with the fact that when you're in the during regular lectures, and we don't have anything against that. Lectures are needed as well, but you might be engaged in something that is called rote learning. There's a lot going on at the same time. There's only so much information that our brains can get at a given time. There's only so much we can process, and it's all coming in, and it makes it difficult. We engage in memorizing facts and information, and that doesn't result in long-term learning. We might memorize it and maybe do well in an exam, but when it comes time to actually apply that knowledge in the future, it makes it so much difficult, and the possibility of actually being able to store that information within our brains, within the current schema, within what we already know, it's more complicated, because again, the process of transferring information that we're getting from the environment at that moment, from short-term memory to long-term memory, if it's too much at the same time, it decreases our ability to actually retain that information and make use of that in the future when it's needed within the context of where it needs to be applied.
All right, so this is a lot of theory. I even put it like a miniature lit review in the chat, just because I know you guys are all overachievers. No, just, but we just wanted to get the kind of the theoretical framework out of the way, and now let's dig into what are the techniques. So the first one is think, pair, share, and probably you've participated in this and you didn't even know it was called TPS. All right, so it's not rocket science. It's a really simple classroom assessment technique, and I say classroom, but transfer it to your tutoring setting, and it's first you ask the students to think individually about a topic or a question, the prompt, if you will. So they think about that on their own, independently. Then you have them pair up to compare the notes. You may say, well, that's good in a classroom study. What about virtual? Well, you can have breakout rooms where you have pairs in breakout rooms, or you can have them in 3s or 4s, and then you have those student pairs then share their ideas with the whole group. So say no more, we're actually going to do this right now. So here's our think, pair, share. I'm not going to put you in breakout rooms because it's going to take too much time, but here's a prompt. How can you, as tutors, or if you're teaching a course, how can you get your students to actively take part in their learning? So go ahead, write in the chat, and we'll see what we come up with here. So first you got to think by yourself. We're going to bypass the pair and then go. That you're thinking. Okay, okay. Okay.
Yeah, Diana, that's excellent. Explain the topic being discussed to the group. It actually helps in the learning process because we get students prepared for what's coming next. They won't be lost with all the new information. They're prepared. They know what they're going to read about or be exposed to during that session. So it really helps in the learning process.
Mm-hmm. I like what Kimberly wrote. Have them explain how they understand the assignment. Sometimes we get a tutoring session, we're like the soothsayer, like, let me try to interpret this assignment. I wasn't in the class, but I'm trying to help you. And sometimes we're like, yeah, I don't know what the teacher wants. So, how do you understand? That's what we're going to have to go off right here.
Wanda, what you said, make lessons relatable. That's also an excellent thing to include within instruction because it increases motivation, which we mentioned before. Motivation is the basis for learning. If there's no motivation, people are not interested, so they don't care what the professor is saying or what's going on during a tutoring session. So when they can relate to that information, that increases motivation. So that's an excellent way to improve instruction.
And what Gano wrote, help students draw upon previous knowledge. That's so important. We all know who Elon Musk is, right? He has, he's made an incredible impress on the world of technology with Tesla cars and probably other stuff. I think space too, whatever. But anyway, he has something that he calls his, like, in the context of learning, he calls it his semantic tree. And so when he learns something new, he has the thick trunk, these heavy branches, and when he learns something new, he says it's like mental hooks. He's putting it on the branches, these leaves and the details, and that's how he's growing in his knowledge, by these mental hooks. But you need the trunk first. You need these big branches. So you're asking them, their previous knowledge would be that foundation. Okay.
And also, Dr. Kelly, Marcos wrote, asking them to vocalize the steps that they followed to reach the answer. That is also a good thing to include because we're having them collaborate, learn from each other during this time, and it actually really supports the retention and the future recall of information, because during this process, when we collaborate, we're going to get all these clues, all this information from that session that we had, and we're going to be able to actually get that knowledge back and apply it when needed. So that's actually, the collaboration is essential, is very good.
I love it. You're using all the senses too, as much as you can, because learning is also experience. And if we can anchor that learning emotion, even the language acquisition, if you can connect it to emotion, and engage and even break down, sometimes that affective filter that's a barrier to, use emotions, use senses, work to strengthen their knowledge. Excellent. Good stuff. Let me show you some prompts that we got from the, and I'm going to continue to read the chat too. But just take a moment, you can see kind of in our world at the medical campus the kind of prompts that we got from the EMT area, from the med tech class, nursing. So you can also think about the kind of prompts that you could use in your areas. I'm reading Stephanie's. Walk them through an example, then ask them. Very good. Yeah, what Stephanie brings up here is, again, putting the responsibility on the shoulders of the tutors. Ask them to try a new example, to use new knowledge. Very good. And it's helping the tutor understand where they need help. Again, kind of metacognition, engaging their thinking about their own thinking. Very good. Any ideas in your areas that you could use?
Let's just keep in mind that when we incorporate different learning strategies to tutoring or instruction in general, variety is essential. Like Dana was saying, incorporate visuals, incorporate maybe written information. All that really makes helps the students retain that knowledge and gain those skills that they need. So variety, within instruction is very effective and efficient.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I'm going to go on to the next technique called the jigsaw technique. And I came across this even before I heard about classroom assessment techniques and Angelo and Cross and all those guys. I learned this technique in my master's class. My professor had an incredible way of using teaching techniques to show us how to teach without telling us these are classroom teaching techniques. Just do these activities and we're like, oh, this is so much fun. Every class was like an activity. And I would get so involved in the activity, I didn't know that she was modeling instructional activities. So anyway, one technique she showed us without revealing it until the end of the class, what it was called, is a jigsaw technique. And so what she did was she gave us a reading. Okay, so it was, I don't know how many pages of an article or half a chapter or something. She divided the reading into segments, and each member she assigned to be an expert on that segment. And then that member who becomes the expert on the segment then had to teach the lesson to the whole group. And each member teaches the lesson on their segment to the whole group. So in effect, you are reading the whole article or chapter without having to read the whole article. You just have to be an expert in your area, and then you heard from everybody else. And it was really, really efficient, especially when you got to cover so much information. I'm going to give you an example of a dental hygiene book. I don't know if we have our dental hygienist in our session. Yes, she's here. So this is from her. By just looking at that, it's a lot of, and it may be a little blurry, and you can blow it up a little bit if you want. You can zoom in. But it's a lot of medical terminology, very, very technical, and students have stuff for their tests. So how can you possibly attack all that? What students want to do is they want to highlight and underline, but really highlighting and underlining really does little to improve performance for students. I don't know if they know that, but you can color and underline all day, but it doesn't help you make connections. You just get overwhelmed with information. But in assigning a student to become an expert in that section, they are learning by teaching. And I read recently that it was the percentage of how people learn, and by teaching from the middle of the room. And you retain 95% of what you teach, and only 10% of what you read. I'm like, that was mind-blowing. So in teaching this to their peers, they're going to get it. I'm going to show you another page. It's just going to make you go, wah. But go ahead, Ivan.
If we go back to the jigsaw technique list, the previous slide, the first one on the technique. Perfect. When we're dividing the reading into segments, what we're doing is we're helping our brain overcome limitations of working memory. We're putting multiple elements together, and that acts as a single element, in our memory, and it makes it helps us understand and actually retain that information for when we need to use it in the future. For example, when we group continents, countries by continents, for example. So when we assign members of a group to become experts on specific segments, I could think, for example, about online courses. We can have an assignment where the class is divided into groups. Each group is going to work on a specific chapter or within a specific section of a chapter. And then after that, for example, in a discussion board, and it could also happen live in a classroom, but for example, in a discussion board within Blackboard, the students can post their findings. They can comment on the rest of the groups, learn what the rest of the groups came up with, learn from each other, gain all that new information, their perspectives, which are going to be different. They can also reflect on what they learned. And in addition to that, they're going to be able to get feedback from the faculty or from the tutor or the person in charge of learning. So this technique is very efficient and very effective as well.
Very good. Well, we're on the third technique, exit ticket. Okay, hopefully you're not thinking about exiting, but it's called the exit ticket. And the idea is it's part of what's called formative assessment. So you want to kind of monitor students' learning as they go. The best way is as they're leaving your tutoring session or classroom is, well, in the good old days when we were face-to-face, it could be an index card where they write, I used to think, but now I know. But now you can just put it in the chat, how has this session changed what you now know? How has it corrected your thinking? And I'd like to show you an example from a student from a class on echocardiography. She writes, I used to think that echocardiography was boring and wasn't necessary as a sonographer, but now I know that it's extremely important and how much it has contributed to medicine to help diagnose patients with heart diseases. So she had kind of a mind change here. And this is good to know. What is going through students' minds? We want to know that. We can't read their mind to know what is it you're getting out of this session. Another type of exit ticket is for the students to write or put in the chat 2 things you've learned. Or in our case at the medical campus, which is very technical oriented, is what's one skill that you can now use. We want to know that information. And I want to show you an example of an exit ticket from an ultrasound class. 2 things that I've learned. She wrote, I learned that it's not just taking a picture in ultrasound. I learned a lot on our different blood vessels, both upper and lower extremities, and also how each supply our organs. Plus, I get to see it on the ultrasound machine. So there's a lot in there. There's the different blood vessels and the different extremities, the 2 extremities, and how it supplies blood to the organs, and being able to see it on the ultrasound machine. So these are 2 practical things that she's learned. And exit tickets, they come in many different sizes and shapes. Not literally sizes and shapes, but different types. There's what is the muddiest point when they leave your session? What is it that's still not clear for you? Or what are 2 questions or concerns that you still have? And that's good to know, because we try to do as much as we can in 30 minutes, 45 minutes max, but there's still stuff that's unclear, so it can be a lead into the next session. Sorry, getting tongue-tied. And I want to show you another type of exit ticket. This I've never used. I think it's kind of creative, but it's using symbols, a square. This squared with my thinking. This is still swirling around in my head because there's things that it just takes longer to kind of percolate. And then this is something I will try or change. So it's more like a call to action. Another exit ticket example is demonstrate a skill. So in the case of Christina Lee, when she's tutoring dental hygiene students, see them with the dental instruments. Are they using it properly? Or if you're a math tutor, and I'm sure there's many others, work the math problem or answer a subject-specific question. In the world of tutoring, writing tutoring rather, we can use anonymous student writing samples and have the students actually correct the errors themselves. So now they're kind of becoming the tutor for another writing sample. And it really shows, did they get it? Do they really know how to work a semicolon, or are they just kind of following our lead? So those are some ideas for exit ticket variations. Do you have any other suggestions of what you could do to kind of close out your session in this, using this technique? I will open the chat up. And again, you can chat anytime. We'd like that. Any other ideas of what you could do for exit tickets? Do you see it practical? Definitely. Okay, great. Okay. And again, they don't have to be long. They can be really quick feedback mechanisms. It doesn't have to, don't get overwhelmed with like dental instruments. What? It could be even just a question as they leave. Anybody else out there? We got 33 participants. Anybody else? No? You're still thinking about it. Definitely. Another definitely. Okay. Well, I'm going to give you a sneak preview. At the end, you're all going to fill out an exit ticket. So hopefully by the end, you'll think of what you can do with this technique. We're going to go on to the next one. Ivan.
Yes.
The fourth active learning technique.
Okay, so the fourth active learning technique is problem-based learning. And with problem-based learning, we engage students on finding the answers to a problem. We engage them in discovery, they have to conduct their own research, work on their own most of the time, but at the same time, you'll have the tutor or the faculty that's providing feedback and guidance during this process. But before we go into problem-based learning in more detail, we wanted to share a quick video with you.
Okay, there's my cue. Let me get this up here and running.
Problem-based learning, or PBL for short, is an educational approach that's collaborative and built around solving a complex real-life problem or scenario that you might in a professional setting. Now, in traditional teaching, there's a teacher who stands in front of a big group of students and gives a lecture, while students scramble to listen, understand, and remember everything the teacher's saying. It can be hard to keep track of all that new information, let alone really absorb it. In contrast, problem-based learning is designed to teach students how to teach themselves, while becoming master problem solvers along the way. The classroom looks like this. A handful of students work in small groups, real-life scenarios with the guidance of a tutor. Problem-based learning is often used in medical education, where students work through clinical cases based on real-life patients. As an example, let's say that our problem-based learning case describes a 72-year-old man who has chest pain. The student doctors start thinking about this problem by brainstorming a list of follow-up questions. Where exactly is the pain? When did it start? Are there any other symptoms? What's the past medical, drug, and family history? Could the patient have a heart, gastrointestinal, lung, or even musculoskeletal problem? Over the course of the session, The case might include lab data, pictures, videos, or even a real-life patient actor who will answer their questions. Together, the students figure out what they already know and where they might have gaps in their knowledge. Many questions start threads of information that lead to more questions and more threads, and it can quickly evolve into a giant tangled spider web of knowledge and questions. All of the information questions are tracked by a student scribe either on a whiteboard or a shared document online. Many groups also create concept maps to organize their thoughts, to help untangle the web, and that helps mirror how our brain works to construct knowledge. So while the students are asking questions about the problem, creating, tangling, and untangling information, where's the tutor and what's their job? Well, the tutor supports self-directed learning by facilitating the process, generally staying in the background, and strategically directing the discussion to get students to dig deeper into the material. The tutor also helps to make sure that everyone's participating, collaborating, and thinking critically about the problem. Rarely do tutors provide actual information. At the end of the discussion, the group makes a list of learning issues, or how and why questions that need to be researched before the next session. For our 72-year-old man, the group might research, how exactly does the heart pump blood? Why do heart attacks cause pain? Students divide up the list of learning issues and head off to research on their own. Now, before the next class, each student gathers information from online resources and books and shares it with the rest of the group. That way, when the students meet up again, they can dive right in and apply the new information to the case. This critical step provides students with the opportunity to weave individual concepts together, to get a deeper and richer understanding of the material by putting it into the larger conceptual framework of the case and our web, which becomes stronger, more organized, and more easily remembered. The case might be revealed in a single day or over several sessions. Either way, students continue to build and iterate on their knowledge webs, applying what they learned and clarifying anything that's unclear. By actively engaging in learning through problem solving, students do more than memorize content. They also learn how to work together to build a strong web of interconnected information which they can use to solve real-world problems. Additionally, students master meaningful skills like teamwork, critical thinking, lifelong learning, and communication. All right, as a quick recap. Through problem-based learning, students can examine cases or problems, follow their curiosity to answer specific questions that come up as they explore, and collaborate with their group to share and learn information. In this way, they can actively construct complex webs of knowledge, which helps them remember the information that they use to solve this problem and the next one too. Thanks for watching. If you're interested in a deeper dive on this topic, take a look at osmosis.org, where we have flashcards, questions, and other awesome tools to help you.
Okay, so problem-based learning is very common in medical and engineering schools. Many of them actually use problem-based learning as the basis for their curriculum, especially those medical engineering schools that are more progressive. Sometimes our curriculum is set by the Department of Education, and we have to follow, well, we must follow the learning outcomes. But in these schools, problem-based learning is actually being used as an essential part of the learning process. And there are many approaches to problem-based learning, and I'm pretty sure that our tutors for the different subject areas will be able to identify examples of an activity that could be implemented or provided to students to engage in this process. So what problem-based learning actually is, we provide the learner with a structured problem. So they learn by investigating, finding solutions to real-life situations, to problems that might have more than one solution, and needs more information before it's clear, which is very, of course, it happens all the time within the medical field. We have to provide a diagnosis, and the causes, the symptoms for a condition might have a variety of different causes. So we have to engage in that process of finding out what the solution is to that process, and it could also be applied to other areas as well. It's by no means this is not specific only to medical and engineering schools. It is based also on existing knowledge. So based on that, we can develop instructional activities based on problem-based learning. So we'll have the students becoming their own learners, and on the other side, we have the tutor or the faculty acting as facilitators. They're guiding the instruction and asking students to think about their thinking, to reflect on what they've learned, because during this process, you're actually generating all these clues that in the future you'll be able they'll come in hand. You have to actually recall that knowledge and use it in a real life situation. It is student-centered learning. The students are leading the search, they're leading the learning process. But again, you have the faculty or the tutor providing all the support and the guidance that is needed. Dr. Kelly, is there anything that you'd like to add? Hello? Dr. Kelly, are you there?
Sorry, I just did a whole dissertation, verbal dissertation.
Okay, so you were.
Okay, no,
so
I was just saying that the University of Miami, in their Miller School of Medicine,
yes,
they have under the Educational Development Office, under the School of Medicine, they have a whole web page dedicated to problem-based learning. It's really important in medical schools and PA programs, because they know that it's not just knowing stuff, because nothing's ever going to know more than our phones and Google. The students need to know how to put all this learning into practice and make sound decisions.
In real life, when we get into our jobs, real life situations, usually these type of decisions, we're not making them on our own. We will have to consult the experts. We will have to share that with other people, get like kind of not the approval, but to agree on a solution to these types of problems and to these type of activities. And not only problem-based learning, to any type of active learning, we're getting students ready for the real world, right? To face all these situations and to apply knowledge to specific situations. It's not only learning how to apply what we learned to one situation, but to different contexts. Because otherwise, does it really mean that we learn if we're not able to apply that knowledge to different contexts? When we're faced with finding a solution to a problem, a situation.
Very, very good. Also, the Army uses this. They have something called it's a battle training method, in which the idea is that the students learn more from defeat than victory. So they actually kind of simulate a real battleground, and then afterwards they go through all the missteps. Alex's story of his life. Every misstep is analyzed, and there's discussion centered around what should have been done and why. They also call this hot washing. It's really, really interesting. So problem-based learning has many different contexts, but I thought it was interesting that even the Army in their battle training uses this. So yeah, use it for your life too. But we want to encourage you to take this back and figure out how can you possibly identify a problem-based learning activity in your world, in tutoring. What would be an exercise that you could use? And you could share the next step meeting, or you can share it now. But are there any ways that you can take this problem-based learning and apply it now to your tutoring world? Any ideas? I don't want this just to remain in theory, but I want this to be as practical as possible. Any feedback from our participants? You can also talk. You don't have to just chat.
And I was discussing with Dr. Kelly the other day when we were preparing for the presentation, thinking about the medical campus and our tutors, and some cases of students that come unprepared to the tutoring sessions with wrong expectations, that sometimes they don't go through the readings prior to the tutoring session. They want the tutor to actually do all the work for them. And I thought, well, maybe we could kind of design an exercise that's general. It doesn't have to be specific to a program. I think we're, prepared enough to come up with an idea that'll work for most subject areas, where we can have students, especially in this case where they come unprepared, to okay, so you need to do the readings, you need to prepare yourself before we start. We can help you, because we need to focus on specific areas and help you with specific skills, and we're not going to go through the whole lecture. That's the professor's job in this process. So let's have you go into the real world, go to the library, maybe meet with an expert within your subject area, talk to your faculty, to your peers, right? And do the readings, and then maybe go and to YouTube and watch a couple of videos that they might be recommended by the tutors, and then come to our session prepared to discuss, the areas of need and what you need more support with, right? And kind of something like that type of exercise. So let's take a look at the chat and see what people are writing about.
Okay, thanks, Gaynell. Help students discover where and how to get the information they need. Yeah, that's again taking responsibility for their learning. Perhaps we could have group sessions where students figure out their own errors with quotations and references using our handouts. Yes, definitely so. You locate them.
That's an excellent idea as well. Apply what they learn, within each discipline. Yeah, we need to learn to apply our knowledge. Otherwise, it ends up with just a lecture. We need to be able to apply that, and it happens all the time. And we see it in our campuses and medical, for example, with our tutors in the lab. They learn the material, they learn the theory during lecture, but then when they go to the lab with the tutors, they apply it, right? During actual sessions with maybe through the simulation lab or with other peers, and you apply those skills. That's important. You need to learn it, but then you need to apply it within the context where it's going to be used in the future in our real jobs.
Mm-hmm. Well, we are finishing up here. We have time for Q&A, and also I'm going to couple it with your exit tickets. So we like to know, as you're reading, what can you put into practice? What's one skill or technique that you can implement in your tutoring setting? And I'm not sure what is not coming up on the screen, but basically it says your exit ticket. Here we are. And
Dr. Kelly, we wanted our tutors to identify problem-based learning activity, and I guess they mentioned that already. And for medical campus tutors, especially, we want you to identify an activity. Just think about it. We're not giving you any homework. Just think about that. For a spring training, we're going to further discuss problem-based learning and maybe think of an example, an activity that we could design a learning strategy to support our students. And we're going to discuss that during the spring tutor training next semester. So keep that in mind for medical campus tutors, and of course for other tutors as well. If you find any of this information and any of these strategies helpful, you could also come up with an exercise that at given moments would come in handy for students.
Excellent. Jahan, thank you for your exit ticket. She says, don't lecture, correct an error by identifying the rule, then allow the student to correct the next error if it occurs again, the essay. Yes, because that is how they learn. And there's the old saying, for the things we have to learn before we can do them, we learn by doing them. I forget who that was, maybe Aristotle, I'm not sure, Google it, but absolutely. Kimberly, thank you, exit ticket. I will be using this information immediately in my collaborative teamwork talk. Yay, okay. I love the word immediately, because that's what we want, immediate implementation if possible. So thank you, Marcos. We need to be more innovative in our tutoring and apply more techniques from active learning. Excellent, practice creative problems to help students. Yes, and what would be optimal is if they could even come up with the problems. And there's, oh wait, before I go on, maybe these, well, I'd like to incorporate to bring an outline of what they don't understand. From there, identifying the rule of process they get lost on. Good, I'm glad you enjoyed it, Henry. Thank you, Brandon. I like the students bringing their own outline. And, we have to bring students up to this level of taking responsibility and for them to get involved. So you are part of that, even though you're not their professors, you are encouraging them to get where they need to be and to, yes, to take responsibility for their learning. I really like the jigsaw method and okay, encouraging not to fear setbacks, yes.
And in the real world, we're preparing them for the real world because in real life, you're not going to have the lecture, you're not going to have the tutor when you're, when we're engaged in our jobs. A lot of what we learn and a lot of what we have to apply, we have to learn on our own, right? We have to do the research, we have to collaborate with other people. So all these techniques are really preparing them for their future, right? As professionals.
Yeah. All right, I believe our time's up. You're welcome, Donna and Alex and everyone else. Thank you, Patrick, for moderating and for all the participants. We'll see you at the next session. Okay. Bye, everyone. Yes.
Thanks, everyone, for coming. Thank you.